I thought the surprise was the candles or the jazz my husband set up for our 5-year anniversary. Then I stepped onto the balcony with the drink he mixed, and my hearing aids caught his whisper. He told someone on the phone that I would not remember a thing. The glass in my hand stopped feeling romantic and started feeling like evidence. If Wes wanted an anniversary kiss, I decided I would give him one that tasted like consequences. My name is Adeline Hughes. I am 39 years old, and I work as a lead internal fraud investigator at Kestrel Pine Compliance and Investigations. My job is not about chasing bank robbers or solving murders. It is quieter than that. My job is to sniff out the things people try to erase. I look for the extra decimal point in a spreadsheet. I look for the vendor invoice that was time-stamped at 3 in the morning on a Sunday. I look for the silence where there should be noise. People think they can hide their sins in the details, but the details are exactly where I live. I have spent the last 15 years training my brain to see the pattern in the chaos, to notice the one thread that is slightly off color. It is a useful skill when you are auditing a Fortune 500 company. It is a curse when you're standing in your own kitchen, watching your husband of 5 years try to act like he loves you. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. It was our 5th wedding anniversary. We lived in a high-rise condo in the Gulch, Nashville. It was one of those places with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city lights, the kind of place designed to make you feel like you had made it. The air conditioning was set to a crisp 68 degrees. The lights were dimmed low. From the moment I walked through the door, I felt like I had stepped onto a movie set. Wes was in the kitchen. This was the first anomaly. My husband, Wes Hughes, was a man who thought ordering takeout required culinary effort. He was the man who once burned popcorn so badly we had to evacuate the apartment for 3 hours. But tonight, he was wearing a slate gray apron over his dress shirt, and he was moving with a strange, frantic precision. He had a pan on the stove, searing something that smelled like expensive beef and rosemary. He turned when he heard my heels click on the hardwood floor. He smiled. It was a wide, bright smile. It was the kind of smile a real estate agent gives you when they are trying to sell you a house with a cracked foundation. "Happy anniversary, Addie," he said. I stood there, clutching my purse, trying to calibrate my reaction. A normal wife would drop her bag and run into his arms. A normal wife would be overwhelmed by the romance of it all. But I stood still. My eyes scanned the room before they even landed on him. I saw the table set for 2. He had used the good china, the plates we had not touched since the wedding. He had lit candles. Not just any candles, but the beeswax pillars I had mentioned liking in passing 6 months ago. He had put on a jazz playlist. It was Coltrane. It was the specific album I listened to when I needed to focus on a difficult case file. It was perfect. It was too perfect. It felt like he had studied a manual on how to be the perfect husband. It felt rehearsed. I walked over to the island and set my purse down. I kissed his cheek. His skin was hot, clammy. He smelled of expensive cologne and nervous sweat. "You did all this?" I asked. My voice sounded steady, but inside, my stomach was tightening. It was the same feeling I got when a CEO smiled too much during an audit interview. "I wanted to surprise you," Wes said. He turned back to the stove, flipping the meat with tongs. "I have been practicing. 5 years is a big milestone, right? We need to do it right." He was talking too fast. The cadence was off. Wes usually spoke in a slow, southern drawl that dripped with casual confidence. Tonight, his words were clipped. He was rushing. I sat down at the island stool. I watched him. I watched the way his eyes darted to the wall clock every 30 seconds. It was 7:15 in the evening. He looked at the clock at 7:16. He looked again at 7:17. He was not checking to see if the food was done. He was checking a schedule. He was waiting for a deadline. His phone was sitting on the marble counter next to the cutting board. It was face down. Wes never put his phone face down. He was a man who lived for notifications. He was a commercial real estate broker. His phone was his lifeline. Usually, it was propped up, screen bright, constantly pinging with emails and texts. Tonight, it was a black slab of glass hidden from view. Then, It buzzed. It was a short, sharp vibration against the marble. The sound cut through the jazz music like a dentist drill. Wes did not flinch. He did not look at it. He did not turn it over to see who was calling or texting. He aggressively ignored it. "Aren't you going to get that?" I asked. He laughed, but the sound was thin. "No, absolutely not. Tonight is about us. No work, no distractions. Just you and me. Addie." He poured something from a shaker into a martini glass. The liquid was a pale, shimmering pink. He slid it across the counter toward me. His hand shook. It was a tiny tremor, barely visible, but I saw it. The liquid in the glass rippled ever so slightly. "What is this?" I asked. Lifting the glass. "I call it the anniversary spark," he said. He leaned his hips against the counter, crossing his arms, trying to look relaxed. But his shoulders were up by his ears. "It is a custom recipe. Gin, elderflower, a splash of grapefruit. Try it." I held the glass stem. I did not drink, not yet. I looked at him through the rim of the glass. Why was he so nervous? Was he hiding a gift? Was there a diamond necklace in the dessert that would explain the sweating? That would explain the clock watching? He wanted the timing to be right. I tried to force myself to believe that narrative. I tried to tell the investigator in my brain to take the night off. "This is your husband," I told myself. "He loves you. He is trying. Stop analyzing him like he is a suspect in a wire fraud case." I started to stand up. "Let me help you with the sides," I said. "I cannot just sit here while you do everything." "No." The word came out too sharp. It was a bark. He realized it immediately and softened his face, but the mask had slipped for a fraction of a second. He walked around the counter and put his hands on my shoulders, gently pushing me back down onto the stool. "I mean, no," he said, his voice dropping to a lower, softer register. "I do not want you lifting a finger. You work too hard. Addie, you are always stressed, always chasing bad guys. Tonight, I want you to just sit there and look beautiful. Let me take care of you." It was a compliment. It was a romantic sentiment. But to my ears, it sounded like a command. "Just sit there. Stay in your spot. Do not move. Do not look too closely at what I'm doing." My throat felt dry. The intuition that had saved my career a dozen times was now screaming at me in my own kitchen. Something was wrong. The air in the apartment felt heavy, charged with static. I looked at the anniversary spark in my hand. It looked innocent. It looked delicious. But I could not shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. I decided to create a record. It was instinct. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. "What are you doing?" Wes asked. He had gone back to the stove, but he was watching me over his shoulder. "Just taking a picture," I said. "For the memory, it is beautiful. Wes." I held up my phone and framed the shot. I focused on the cocktail, but I did not just capture the drink. I angled the lens so it caught the background. I captured the time on the microwave, 7:22. I captured the empty bottle of gin on the counter. I captured the specific brand of tonic water. I captured the way Wes's phone was still lying face down next to the knife block. I snapped 3 photos in rapid succession. Click, click, click. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I would look at these photos in 10 years and laugh at how suspicious I was. But deep down, I knew I was gathering evidence. I just did not know what the crime was yet. Wes plated the food. He brought the dishes to the dining table. He lit the candles. The flame flickered in the reflection of the window glass. "Come on," he said. "Bring your drink." I walked to the table. I sat down. The steak looked perfect. The mood was set, but the silence between the saxophone notes felt heavy. Wes sat opposite me. He picked up his own glass. It was filled with dark amber liquid. Bourbon. He was not drinking the anniversary spark. "You are not having one?" I asked, gesturing to my pink cocktail. "I am sticking to the brown stuff tonight," he said. "I need something stronger to calm my nerves. I wanted tonight to be perfect." He checked the wall clock again. 7:25. He suddenly stood up. "You know what? This lighting is okay, but it is not right. We need the city lights." He walked over to the sliding glass door that led to our balcony. He slid it open. The humid Nashville air drifted in, mixing with the smell of the steak. "I am going to mix one last drink for myself," he said. "A fresh one. And then we are going to toast on the balcony, just like our honeymoon. Remember? We sat on that balcony in Italy for hours. I want to recreate that vibe." He looked at me. His eyes were wide, intense. "Go on out, Addie," he urged. "I will be right there. Just give me 2 seconds to mix this. Take your drink. Go enjoy the view." I looked at the open door. The balcony was dark. The city of Nashville sprawled out below, a grid of gold and white lights. It was a long drop down. "Okay," I said. I picked up the anniversary spark. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but I forced them to move. I walked toward the open glass door. I stepped out onto the concrete balcony. The wind whipped my hair across my face. I walked to the railing and looked down. I heard Wes moving in the kitchen behind me. I heard the clink of glass. I assumed he was pouring his bourbon. I assumed he was coming to join me to celebrate 5 years of marriage. I did not know that I had just walked out of my marriage and into a crime scene. I stood there, gripping the cold stem of the glass, waiting for my husband. I did not know that inside the apartment, the performance was ending and the reality was about to begin. I took a breath, and the silence of the balcony wrapped around me. I waited. I stood on the balcony and let the night air cool the flush on my cheeks. The wind up here on the 20th floor was strong, carrying the distant hum of Nashville traffic and the faint thrum of bass from the honky-tonks on Broadway miles away. For a fleeting moment, I allowed myself to feel the softness of the evening. I looked at the city lights blurring into a golden haze and convinced myself that the tension in my shoulders was just work stress leaving my body. I told myself that the man inside was just my husband, anxious to make a milestone perfect, not a stranger wearing my husband's face. The glass in my hand was cold, the condensation slick against my palm. I lifted it slightly, admiring the pink hue of the anniversary spark against the dark skyline. It looked innocent. It looked like a celebration. Then the vibration started. It was not my phone. My phone was buried deep in the pocket of my blazer. This was a low, persistent buzz coming from the small bar table just inside the glass sliding door. The door was open a crack, just enough to let the jazz music drift out. But technically, I was separated from the interior by a wall of soundproof glass. Wes was standing by the bar. He had his back to me. He picked up the phone immediately, snatching it off the marble surface like it was burning his fingers. He did not check the caller ID. He knew who it was. I watched him through the reflection in the glass door. He hunched his shoulders, creating a physical shield around the device, turning his body so he was facing the hallway, away from the balcony, to a normal person, to a wife with standard hearing. He would have been muffled. He would have been just a silhouette mouthing words into a void. But I am not a normal wife, and my hearing is not standard. I wear high-fidelity hearing aids. They are not the bulky beige plastic things my grandfather wore. These are sleek, titanium processors that cost $4,000 a pair. They are designed to isolate speech frequencies in crowded boardrooms and cut through background static during forensic interviews. I can adjust the settings with a tap behind my ear. When I stepped onto the balcony, I had instinctively tapped them to focus mode to cut down the wind noise. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying. The wind died. The jazz music became a distant background layer, and Wes's voice, which should have been inaudible through the glass partition, was suddenly crisp and clear, as if he were whispering directly into my auditory canal. He spoke low, but the clarity was absolute. "It is done," he said. I froze. My hand tightened around the stem of the martini glass. I did not breathe. I did not blink. I focused every ounce of my attention on the audio feed streaming into my brain. There was a pause. He was listening to the person on the other end. My hearing aids are good, but they cannot pick up the other side of a phone call unless the volume is loud. But the volume was loud. The room inside was quiet, and the person on the other end was shouting, or at least speaking with a frantic, high-pitched urgency that leaked out of the speaker. I heard a female voice. It was young. It was breathless. It was the voice of someone who was scared of getting caught. "Are you sure?" the woman asked. Her voice was tinny but distinct. What if she remembers, if she wakes up and remembers Wes cut her off? His voice had changed. The nervous, stuttering charm he had displayed 10 minutes ago was gone. It had been replaced by a flat, metallic tone that I had never heard in 5 years of marriage. It was the voice of a man closing a business deal. It was the voice of a man who had already calculated the profit margins. "Relax," Wes said. His voice was ice. "She will not remember a thing. The dosage is precise. It creates a 12-hour blackout window. By the time she wakes up, the timeline will be established." My blood ran cold. The sensation was physical, a wave of numbness that started in my chest and shot down to my fingertips. I stared at the back of his head, at the expensive haircut I'd paid for, at the collar of the shirt I had ironed. The woman on the phone spoke again. "I need to know about the paperwork. Wes, if the police look at the beneficiary, they will see a grieving husband." Wes snapped. "Stop panicking. The policy was updated weeks ago. The beneficiary change is locked in. Tonight is just the execution. No one can prove a thing. It is a tragic accident, an anniversary celebration gone wrong, alcohol mixed with fatigue. Beneficiary." The word hit me like a physical blow to the sternum. Execution. That word hit harder. My knees unlocked, threatening to buckle. But I forced them straight. I was not Adeline the wife anymore. Adeline the wife would have dropped the glass. Adeline the wife would have screamed and stormed into the room demanding answers. Adeline the wife would be dead by morning. I forced Adeline the investigator to take the wheel. The panic rising in my throat tasted like bile, but I swallowed it down. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat that felt loud enough to shake the balcony railing. But my hands remained steady. It was the same eerie calm that descended on me when I found a $1 million discrepancy in a ledger. The world narrowed down to facts. Fact 1. My husband is planning to harm me tonight. Fact 2. There is a woman helping him. Fact 3. They are doing this for insurance money. Fact 4. The drink in my hand is the weapon. I needed proof. My word against his would mean nothing. He was the charismatic realtor. I was the stressed-out investigator who saw conspiracies everywhere. If I survived tonight without evidence, he would just try again next week. Or he would gaslight me until I thought I had imagined the whole conversation. I needed a record. I shifted my grip on the glass to my left hand. My right hand drifted to the ring on my index finger. It looked like a chunky piece of onyx statement jewelry, something fashionable and modern. In reality, it was a piece of high-end surveillance tech I had bought for undercover audits where phones were confiscated at the door. It was a simpler device than a phone, but effective. I rubbed the surface of the ring twice with my thumb. A tiny, imperceptible vibration against my skin confirmed it. Recording started. I kept my eyes glued to Wes. He was still on the phone, nodding at something the woman was saying. "Just get the car ready," he said. 20 minutes. I need you parked in the blind spot we discussed. And bring the bag." He listened for another second, then added, "I love you too. See you soon." He hung up. The disconnect was abrupt. He shoved the phone back into his pocket. He took a deep breath, rolling his neck as if loosening up before a big game. Then he turned around. I watched the transformation happen in real time. It was terrifyingly impressive. As he turned from the hallway back toward the balcony, the cold, dead look in his eyes evaporated. The tension in his jaw softened. The corners of his mouth lifted. By the time he faced the glass door, he was Wes, the doting husband again. He picked up his bourbon glass from the counter and strode toward the balcony, sliding the door open the rest of the way. "Hey, sorry about that," he said. His voice was warm, dripping with that fake Southern charm. "Just a client who does not know the meaning of office hours. I told them to get lost. Tonight is about my beautiful wife." He stepped out onto the balcony. The air between us felt charged. electric with the violence of his secret. He stood close to me, too close. I could smell the expensive cologne masking the scent of his betrayal. He looked at the drink in my hand. He noticed it was still full. "You have not taken a sip yet?" he asked. There was a flicker of impatience in his eyes, gone as quickly as it appeared. "I was waiting for you," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached and distant, but to him, it probably just sounded like affection. I did not want to toast alone. He smiled. It was the smile of a predator who thinks the trap has already snapped shut. "Well, I am here now," he said. He raised his glass of bourbon. "To us, Addie, to 5 years, and to the rest of our lives." The irony was so sharp it almost cut my tongue. The rest of our lives. He meant the rest of my life, which he had scheduled to end in a matter of hours. I raised my glass. The pink liquid swirled, looking toxic in the moonlight. "To us," I whispered. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had shared a bed with for 1,825 days. I looked at the man who had held my hand at my father's funeral. I looked at the man who was currently calculating how to spend my life insurance payout with a woman young enough to be breathless on the phone. I realized then that grief is not something you feel after a death. I was grieving him right now, while he was standing in front of me. The Wes I loved was dead. He had never existed. This man in front of me was a stranger, and this stranger wanted to kill me. I knew I could not drink this, but I also knew I could not refuse it. If I refused, he would know I knew. If I refused, the violence would shift from chemical to physical. We were 20 floors up. A push over the railing would be just as effective as a poisoned cocktail. Just messier to clean up. I had to play the game. I had to let him think he had won. I brought the glass to my lips. The smell of the elderflower was overpowering, sickeningly sweet. My brain screamed at me to run, to smash the glass, to scream for help, but my body stood its ground. I had a recording running. I had a case to build. And most importantly, I had a survival instinct that was finally waking up from a 5-year nap. I did not know how I was going to get out of this apartment. I did not know who the woman was or what the car in the blind spot meant, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was not going to die tonight. I tilted the glass, letting the liquid touch my lips, but not entering my mouth, pantomiming the first sip of my own murder. "Cheers, Wes," I said. The game was on. The night air on the balcony felt heavy, pressing against my skin like a physical weight, but my mind was operating in a vacuum of cold. Sharp clarity. We stood there, two figures framed against the Nashville skyline, holding glasses that caught the reflection of the city lights. Wes placed his glass down on the small, round bistro table between us. It made a sharp clink against the metal surface. He looked at my glass, then at his own, and frowned slightly, patting his pockets with a theatrical exaggeration that would have made a bad actor cringe. "Oh, shoot," he said, shaking his head with a rueful smile. "I forgot the cocktail napkins. You know how these glasses sweat in the humidity. I do not want to leave rings on the table." It was a flimsy excuse. We were outside. The table was weather-resistant metal. No one cares about water rings on outdoor furniture, but I knew exactly what he was doing. He was creating a gap. He was manufacturing a void in the scene to give me privacy. "Let me just grab a stack from the kitchen," he said, already backing away. "You relax, take a sip. I will be back in 10 seconds. He turned and slid the glass door open. I watched him step over the threshold. I watched the door slide shut, muting the jazz music for a fraction of a second before the seal broke again. He walked toward the kitchen island, his back to me. The moment his silhouette crossed the frame of the sliding door, the countdown in my head began. 10. I did not panic. Panic is a luxury for victims. And I had decided 30 seconds ago that I was not a victim. I was an investigator working a crime scene, and the crime was currently happening in my hand. I moved with the efficiency of a thief. 9. I set the martini glass down on the table. My hand did not shake. My movements were fluid, practiced, devoid of wasted energy. I reached into the deep pocket of my oversized blazer. My fingers closed around the cold glass of a mini perfume atomizer. It was a refillable travel bottle I carried for long flights and days that stretched into nights at the office. It was currently empty, waiting for a refill of my signature scent. Tonight, it would carry something far more potent. 8. I unscrewed the silver top of the atomizer. The threads turned smoothly. I held the open vial in my left hand and the martini glass in my right. I did not pour hastily. A spill would be catastrophic. A spill would leave a sticky residue that I could not explain. I tilted the martini glass with surgical precision, guiding a stream of the pink liquid into the narrow mouth of the perfume bottle. I needed enough for a toxicology screen. 15 milliliters would be plenty for the lab boys to find whatever cocktail of sedatives or poisons he had mixed. 7. The liquid filled the vial. I stopped pouring before it reached the neck. I screwed the top back on, tightening it until my knuckles turned white. I slipped the atomizer back into my blazer pocket. Evidence secured. Chain of custody initiated. 6. The wind could blow the spray back onto the glass doors, or worse, it could land on a neighbor's terrace below, creating a witness or a complaint. I needed a containment unit. I turned to the corner of the balcony. There was a large, decorative fern in a heavy ceramic pot. I stepped toward it, shielding the glass with my body in case Wes glanced back through the window. I poured the remaining liquid into the dark soil at the base of the plant. The earth swallowed the pink fluid instantly. I silently apologized to the fern. It would probably be dead by morning. Another casualty of this marriage. 5. The glass was empty. Now came the hardest part. I had to recreate the murder weapon. I stepped quickly to the small bar cart Wes had set up in the corner of the balcony. It was stocked with the basics club soda, tonic water, a bucket of melting ice, and a few garnishes. I scanned the bottles. I needed pink. I needed fizz. 4. I grabbed the bottle of pink grapefruit soda. It was not the exact shade of the anniversary spark. It was slightly more vibrant, less opaque, but in the dim light of the candles and the city glow, it would pass. I poured the soda into my glass, filling it to the exact level the poison had occupied moments ago. The carbonation fizzed aggressively. I swirled the glass gently to kill the bubbles, mimicking the flat, shaken texture of a martini. 3. I grabbed a sprig of mint from the garnish bowl and twisted it to release the oils, dropping it onto the surface of the drink just as Wes had done. It floated perfectly. The visual match was 95% accurate. To a man nervous about committing murder, it would look like the drink he poured. 2. I picked up a linen napkin from the cart and wiped the rim of the glass. This looked like the fastidious habit of a woman who disliked sticky glass, but my intent was forensic. I was wiping away any residue of the original liquid that might have lingered on the rim, and more importantly, I was wiping away my own fingerprints from the bowl of the glass. If things went wrong, if this glass ended up in an evidence bag, I wanted his prints to be the only ones on the mixing path. I placed the glass back on the table, exactly where he had left it. 1. I stood up straight. I smoothed the front of my blazer. I arranged my face into a mask of soft, anniversary night contentment. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the city, my posture relaxed. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, beating a rhythm of pure adrenaline, but my hands were still 0. The glass door slid open. Wes stepped back onto the balcony. He held a small stack of cocktail napkins in his hand. He looked breathless, as if he had run to the kitchen and back. Though I knew he had only walked, he was flushed. The anticipation of the event was making his blood pump faster. "Sorry about that," he said, closing the door behind him. He walked to the table and placed the napkins down next to the glasses. He did not look at me immediately. He looked at the glass. I watched his eyes. It was a subtle movement, a quick flick of the gaze downward. He was checking the level. He was checking to see if the volume had changed. He was checking to see if his plan was in motion. He saw the full glass. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. followed instantly by a wave of relief. He thought I had waited for him. He thought I was the obedient, loving wife who wanted to share the moment. He had no idea that the liquid in that glass was now nothing more than grapefruit soda and domestic treachery. "You waited," he said, his voice thick with fake emotion. "That is sweet. Addie." I turned from the railing and smiled. It was the best performance of my life. Of course I waited. I said, "I told you. I did not want to toast alone." I walked over to the table and picked up the glass. I held it by the stem, careful not to let my body heat warm the liquid. Wes picked up his glass. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. I wondered what he saw. Did he see the fear? Did he see the calculation? Or did he just see what he wanted to see, a trusting woman about to be erased? He raised his glass. The amber liquid in his cup caught the candlelight. "To us," he said again. I raised my glass until it clinked softly against his. The sound was clear and bell-like, ringing out into the night air. "To us," I said. I brought the glass to my lips and took a long, deliberate swallow. The grapefruit soda was cold and sweet, the bubbles prickling my tongue. I swallowed it down, letting him watch the muscles in my throat work. I lowered the glass and let out a satisfied sigh. "Delicious," I said. "You really outdid yourself. Wes." He watched me swallow, and for a split second, I saw the tension drain out of his shoulders. He took a drink of his bourbon, masking his relief. He thought the clock had started. He thought the timer on my consciousness was ticking down. But as I stood there, smiling at my husband, my internal monologue was screaming a different toast. To evidence, the game of chess had officially begun. He had made his opening move, confident and aggressive. He did not know that I had just swapped the board while he was looking for napkins. I felt the weight of the perfume bottle in my pocket against my hip. It felt heavier than lead. It felt like insurance. I looked at Wes, really looked at him, and I realized that the man standing before me was not a monster. Monsters are scary because they are unknown. Wes was just a criminal. And criminals make mistakes. He had just made his first one. He let me see the board. I took another sip of the soda, playing the part of the tipsy wife, while my mind began to catalog everything in the room. The position of the chairs, the angle of the security camera in the hallway that I knew he thought was looped, the phone in his pocket. I was not just surviving anymore. I was hunting. "Let us sit," Wes said, gesturing to the chairs. "The view is great tonight." I sat down. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. It was the calm of the eye of the storm. The wind was howling all around me, but here, in the center, I was perfectly still. I had the sample. I had the alibi. Now, I just had to wait for him to make his next move, and I knew he would. Greed is a sloppy driver. It speeds through red lights and misses stop signs. Wes was greedy. He wanted the money. He wanted the girl. And he wanted the freedom. He wanted it all tonight. I leaned back in the chair, swirling the pink liquid in my glass. "So," I said, keeping my voice light, "tell me about this week. You seemed so busy. I baited the hook. Now I just had to wait for him to bite." I took another sip of the grapefruit soda, letting the carbonation fizz against the roof of my mouth. I lowered the glass slowly, making sure the stem lingered in my fingers, loose and relaxed. I looked at Wes through my lashes, softening my gaze until the sharp lines of the Nashville skyline blurred into a haze of gold and black. "This is delicious," I said. My voice was a little breathy, a little too loud for the quiet balcony. I leaned my head back against the chair cushion and let out a long, contented sigh. "It goes straight to your head. Though, does it have a kick?" Wes was watching me with the intensity of a scientist observing a lab rat. He was looking for the droop in the eyelids, the slackening of the jaw. I gave him what he wanted. I blinked slowly, deliberately delaying the reopening of my eyes by a fraction of a second. "It is strong," he admitted. He checked the time on his watch again. "But you deserve to let loose. Addie, finish it up." I smiled, a lopsided, goofy thing that felt foreign on my face. I lifted the glass again, but this time I let my hand wobble. Just a millimeter. Just enough to make the pink liquid slosh dangerously close to the rim. I brought it to my lips and drank, draining the glass until only the melting ice and the bruised mint leaf remained. So good, I murmured. I placed the glass back on the table, but I missed the coaster by an inch. The glass clinked loudly against the metal table surface. Oops, I giggled. My hand went to my forehead, fingers pressing against my temple. Wow, the room is spinning a little. Is the wind picking up? It was a lie. The air was still. My mind was razor sharp. I was calculating angles, analyzing exit routes, and timing his reactions. But to him, I was a woman rapidly losing control of her faculties. Wes stood up immediately. His movement was not the concerned rush of a husband. It was the calculated advance of a predator who sees the prey stumble. He moved around the table and stood over me, blocking out the city lights. His shadow fell across my face. "You okay?" he asked. His voice was thick with false concern, but his eyes were cold. They were scanning me, checking my pupil response, assessing my motor control. His hand dropped to his pocket, and I saw the outline of his fingers gripping his phone. He was not checking to see if I needed water. He was checking the timeline. "I am fine," I said, slurring the words together. "Just floaty. Really floaty, like my legs are made of helium." That was the trigger phrase. I saw the tension leave his jaw. He believed it. He believed the drugs were taking hold. "Why do you not just sit here for a second?" he said. "I am going to grab you some water. Just close your eyes. Addie, just rest." He turned and walked back into the apartment. He moved quickly, with purpose. He did not go to the refrigerator. He went to the far side of the living room, near the hallway entrance, where he thought the sound of the jazz music would cover his voice. I let my head loll back against the chair, pretending to drift into unconsciousness, but I focused my hearing aids on the space between us. The high-fidelity audio processors cut through the saxophone solo and zeroed in on his whisper. "It is happening," he said into the phone. I kept my breathing shallow and even, my chest rising and falling in a slow, rhythmic pattern. Inside, my heart was slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. "She is going under," he whispered, faster than I thought. "I need the car at the service entrance in 20 minutes. Not the front, the service entrance." I heard the pause while the woman on the other end spoke. "No," Wes hissed. "The cameras in the hallway are on a loop, but the elevator has a log. We are taking the stairs. It is only one flight down to the garage level from the service bay. I will carry her. Just have the trunk open. Stairs, trunk, service entrance." The picture snapped into focus with terrifying clarity. This was not just a poisoning, this was a removal. They were not going to leave me here to be found in my bed. A tragic overdose victim. They were moving me. They were going to stage an accident somewhere else. A car crash, a fall from a hiking trail. It did not matter. What mattered was that I was the prop in their production, and once I left this apartment, my chances of survival dropped to zero. He was going to carry me. That meant he expected me to be dead weight, totally incapacitated. I heard him hang up the phone. I heard his footsteps coming back toward the balcony. They were heavy, confident steps. I had to move. If I stayed in the chair, he would try to move me here, on the balcony, or check my pulse. I needed to control the location. I needed to get to the bedroom. The bedroom had a lock. The bedroom had my purse. The bedroom had the one weapon I had left time. I groaned. A low, guttural sound of distress. I forced my eyes open. They felt heavy, but I made them look panicked, unfocused. "Wes," I moaned. "I feel sick. I think I need to lay down." He was at my side in an instant. "Yeah, okay," he said. "Let us get you to bed. Come on." He reached down and grabbed my arm. His grip was shocking. There was no tenderness in it. His fingers dug into my bicep, hard enough to bruise. It was not a helping hand. It was a clamp. He pulled me up from the chair with a force that nearly threw me off balance for real. "Easy," he said, but he did not slow down. He marched me toward the glass doors. I stumbled, letting my weight sag against him. I needed him to struggle with my weight. I needed him to think I was weaker than I was. My legs, I mumbled, they do not work. I got you, he said. He was steering me, guiding me not just into the apartment, but specifically toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms and the service exit. We crossed the living room. The jazz music was still playing, a cruel soundtrack to my abduction. As we passed the kitchen island, I let my free hand drift down to my side. Toward the pocket of my blazer, I needed to send the signal. My phone was in that pocket. It was a sleek smartphone with a tactile emergency button on the side, programmed for situations exactly like this. 3 rapid clicks would send my live GPS location and a pre-written distress code to my emergency contact. My emergency contact was Lena Ortega. Lena was not just my best friend. She was a defense attorney with a shark's instinct and a roster of private security contacts that rivaled the Secret Service. We had a pact. If I sent the code, she did not call me back to ask what was wrong. She sent the cavalry. Wes was moving fast, practically dragging me now. His focus was on the door ahead. He was not looking at my hands. I slipped my fingers into the pocket. I felt the cold metal of the phone casing. 1 click. I stumbled again, purposefully catching my toe on the edge of the rug. Wes cursed under his breath and yanked me upright. "Watch it," he snapped. 2 clicks. We were at the bedroom door. He reached out to turn the handle. "I really do not feel good," I whispered. 3 clicks. The phone vibrated silently against my palm. A single, reassuring pulse. The signal was out. The beacon was lit. Somewhere across the city, Lena's phone was screaming an alarm that cut through whatever dinner or meeting she was in. She would see the location. She would see the code, Blue J. Blue J meant I am with the target. I am in danger. Send help immediately. Wes pushed the bedroom door open. The room was dark. "Here we go," he said. "Just lie down for a second." He guided me toward the bed, but his eyes darted to the closet where he kept his travel duffel bags. He was not planning on letting me sleep. He was staging the holding area while he waited for the car. I sank onto the mattress, letting my body go limp. I curled onto my side, facing away from him, clutching my stomach. "Please," I whispered, "just let me sleep." He stood over me. I could feel his gaze burning into my back. "Sleep tight." "Addie," he said softly. He walked out of the room and closed the door. I heard the lock click from the outside. He had locked me in. He thought he had trapped a helpless, drugged woman in a box. He thought he had 20 minutes to prepare for the final act. He was wrong. He had just locked a fraud investigator in a room with her evidence, her wits, and a silent alarm that was already bringing a storm to his doorstep. I opened my eyes in the darkness. The act was over. Now, the war began. I lay still, listening to his footsteps retreat down the hall, and I started to count the seconds until the cavalry arrived. The room was dark, but the sliver of light from the hallway cut across the floorboards like a warning line. I lay on the bed, keeping my breathing shallow and rhythmic, mimicking the heavy sleep of the sedated. My heart was doing the opposite. It was hammering against my ribs, counting down the seconds since I had pressed the panic button on my phone. Lena Ortega is a shark in a silk blouse. I knew she would not call me. Calling me would give Wes a chance to intercept the phone or force me to speak under duress. Lena knew better. She knew the protocol. She would weaponize the one thing a man like Wes could not intimidate: building policy. I heard the lock click. Wes pushed the door open. He did not turn on the light. He was a silhouette in the doorway, framed by the soft glow of the corridor. He moved with a terrifying urgency. "Time to go. Addie," he whispered. He did not wait for a response. He walked to the side of the bed and gripped my arm. There was no pretense of gentleness now. He pulled me up to a sitting position. I let my head loll forward, my hair falling over my face to hide the fact that my eyes were open and scanning the room. "I feel sick," I mumbled, slurring the words just enough to sound intoxicated but coherent. "You just need some fresh air," he said. His voice was tight. We are going to take a little walk, just down the stairs. It will clear your head. He wrapped his arm around my waist and hoisted me to my feet. I leaned my full weight against him, making myself a burden. He grunted, adjusting his grip. He was strong, but dead weight is difficult to maneuver. He was sweating. I could smell it sharp and metallic over his cologne. We made it to the bedroom doorway. He was dragging me toward the service entrance, away from the main foyer. Then, the sound saved my life. The intercom buzzer near the front door rang out. It was a loud, jarring electronic chirp that echoed through the quiet penthouse. Wes froze. His grip on my waist tightened so hard I almost gasped. He stopped moving. We stood there in the hallway, a tableau of a crime in progress. "Who is that?" he hissed to himself. He looked at the service exit, then back at the front door. The buzzer rang again, long, insistent. This was not a polite visitor. This was authority. He could not ignore it. If he ignored it, whoever was downstairs would come up. If he tried to drag me out the back now, we might run into them in the hallway. He was trapped by the very social norms he tried so hard to perfect. "Stay here," he ordered. He propped me up against the wall near the console table. "Do not move," he said. He smoothed his shirt, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and composed his face into a mask of mild annoyance. He walked to the front door and pressed the intercom button. "Yes," he asked. His voice was steady, but I heard the tremor of adrenaline underneath. "Mr. Hughes, this is Gary from the front desk." The voice crackled through the speaker. "I have a welfare check request for Mrs. Hughes." We tried calling her cell, but there was no answer. "Protocol requires we make visual contact. Lena, brilliant, ruthless Lena. She had called it in as a welfare check. She probably cited a medical condition or a missed check-in. It forced them to see me. She is fine," Wes said, letting out a laugh that sounded like dry leaves crunching. "She had a little too much wine with dinner. She is sleeping it off. I really do not want to wake her." Gary. "I am sorry, sir," Gary said. "The policy is strict." The caller identified herself as legal counsel with medical power of attorney. "If I do not get visual confirmation, I have to call the police for entry." The police. That was the word that broke Wes's resolve. He could not have the police here. Not yet. Not while he had a car waiting in the blind spot. "Fine," Wes snapped. "Give me a second." He turned from the intercom. His eyes darted to me. He looked at me with pure hatred. He walked back to where I was leaning against the wall. "You need to pull it together," he whispered. Grabbing my face in his hands, "Gary is at the door. You are going to smile. Tell him you are fine, and then go back to bed. Do you understand?" I nodded sloppily. "Okay," I whispered. "Water, yeah. Sure. Water. Just get to the door." He grabbed my arm again and steered me toward the main entrance. He opened the door. Gary stood there in his uniform, looking apologetic and firm. Behind him stood another guard I did not recognize. "Witnesses, plural, Mrs. Hughes?" Gary asked, peering past Wes's shoulder. I stumbled forward. I did not wait for Wes to present me. I practically fell into the doorframe. Catching myself with a hand on the jamb, I made sure my hair was messy. I made sure my eyes looked wide and confused. "Hi, Gary," I said. My voice was weak. "She is okay," Wes said quickly, putting a hand on my back. "Just the anniversary cocktails hitting a little hard." "Right. Honey," I looked at Gary. I blinked slowly. Then I delivered the line I had been rehearsing in my head since the balcony. "I do not know." I said softly, "I feel wrong. I do not remember what I drank." The sentence hung in the air. I do not remember what I drank. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of confusion. But to a trained security professional, it triggered a dozen red flags. It suggested spiking. It suggested loss of control. It suggested that the husband's narrative of too much wine was a lie. Gary's face changed. He took a step closer. "Mrs. Hughes, do you need medical assistance?" "Are you in pain?" Wes stepped in front of me, blocking Gary's view. "She is fine," he said, his voice dropping an octave. She just needs sleep. Thank you for checking. Gary, we are good. He tried to close the door. I shoved my foot into the gap. I think I'm going to be sick. I moaned. My heart is racing. Gary, it feels really fast. Gary put a hand on the door to stop it from closing. Sir, she is reporting tachycardia and confusion. I am calling the EMTs. They are 2 blocks away at the station. No, Wes shouted. It was too loud. It was too desperate. He realized his mistake instantly. He tried to dial it back. That is not necessary, he said, forcing a smile. I can drive her if she really needs it. I do not want to make a scene on our anniversary. I cannot let you transport her if she is medically unstable. Sir, Gary said, his voice hardening. It is liability. I am radioing it in now. Gary spoke into his shoulder mic. Dispatch. Send medical to Penthouse B. Possible overdose or reaction. Female. Conscious but disoriented. The word overdose hit Wes like a slap. He stood there, his hands still on the doorknob, realizing that his 20-minute window had just slammed shut. He could not drag me to the car now. He could not stage an accident. There were official logs being created. I slumped against the wall, sliding down until I was sitting on the floor. I just need to sit, I whispered. 5 minutes later, the hallway was full of people. 2 paramedics in navy uniforms were kneeling beside me. One was checking my pulse. The other was shining a light in my eyes. What did you take tonight, ma'am? The medic asked. Any recreational drugs? Prescription meds? I shook my head. No, nothing. What did you drink? My husband made me a cocktail, I said. I made sure my voice was loud enough for Gary to hear. He called it an anniversary spark. I took 1 sip and everything got fuzzy. I looked up at the medic. Can you please write that down? I asked. I have severe allergies. I need to know exactly what was in that mix in case I have a reaction. Please note it in the chart. The medic nodded. Possible allergic reaction to unknown mixed drink, he said to his partner. Let us get a sample if there is any vomit. Otherwise, we will do a tox screen at the hospital. Wes was standing in the corner of the hallway. He looked pale. He was watching the medics create a paper trail that led directly back to his kitchen. We should take her in for observation, the medic said to Wes. Her heart rate is irregular and her pupils are sluggish. I will drive her, Wes said again. He was desperate to get me alone. If he got me alone in the car, he could still salvage this. He could drive off the road. He could claim I grabbed the wheel. No, I said. I gripped the medic's arm. I feel like I might pass out. I want to go in the ambulance. Please. The medic looked at Wes. She goes in the rig. Sir, you can follow us in your vehicle. I cannot let him follow. I thought, if he follows, he has time to call his accomplice. He has time to destroy the evidence in the apartment. Actually, I said, looking at Wes with wide, fearful eyes. Wes, honey, do not leave me. Ride with me. I am scared. Please hold my hand. I held my hand out to him. It was a trap. If he refused, he looked like a cold, unfeeling monster in front of 4 witnesses. If he agreed, he had to leave the apartment immediately, leaving the glass, the fern, and the shaker full of poison on the counter unprotected. But he had no choice. He had to play the role of the worried husband. Okay, baby, he said through gritted teeth. I am coming. He stepped forward and took my hand. His palm was cold and wet. He squeezed my fingers. A silent threat. But I squeezed back. We were moving. The medics loaded me onto the stretcher. They wheeled me into the elevator. The camera in the ceiling corner blinked a red light. I looked up at it. I knew that tomorrow I would subpoena that footage. It would show a devoted husband holding his wife's hand as she was rushed to the hospital. But to a jury, combined with the audio recording in my pocket and the toxicology report I was about to generate, it would show something else. It would show a kidnapper being forced to abandon his crime scene. As the elevator doors closed, cutting off the view of our penthouse hallway, I let out a breath. I was safe. For now. The physical danger was over. He could not kill me in an ambulance. He could not kill me in an emergency room full of nurses and cameras. But the real war was just starting. I closed my eyes and let the medic strap the blood pressure cuff to my arm. My mind was already 3 steps ahead. I needed to get the sample from my pocket to a private lab. I needed to get the digital lock on my phone to Lena. And I needed to make sure that when Wes got back to that apartment, the evidence he thought he had left behind was already gone. I looked at Wes. He was staring at the floor of the elevator, his jaw working. He was calculating. He was trying to figure out how to spin this. He thought he was just dealing with a botched murder. He did not know he was already a defendant in a case he had not even realized was filed. "I love you, Wes," I mumbled, closing my eyes. The lie tasted sweet. It tasted like victory. The morning sun hit the floorboards of our penthouse with a brightness that felt offensive. I walked through the front door of the apartment at 9 in the morning, leaning heavily on the doorframe as if I were still fighting off the remnants of a sedative. Wes was right behind me, his eyes rimmed with red, playing the part of the exhausted, traumatized husband to perfection. To the doorman downstairs and the neighbors we passed in the hall. We were a couple recovering from a medical scare. To me, we were a hunter and prey walking back into the cage. "I am so tired, Wes," I whispered, letting my voice crack. "The doctor said I need rest. I think I'm just going to crash in the guest room. It is darker in there." Wes nodded, hiding his relief behind a mask of concern. He wanted me unconscious. He wanted me out of the way so he could figure out his next move. "You sleep, baby," he said, kissing my forehead. His lips felt cold. "I will handle everything. I will call your office and tell them you are taking a sick day." I went into the guest bedroom and closed the door. I waited exactly 10 minutes. I listened to the sounds of the apartment. I heard Wes pace the living room floor. I heard the hiss of a soda can opening. Then, finally, I heard the heavy thud of the master bedroom door closing. He was crashing. The adrenaline dump from the failed murder attempt had finally caught up with him. I moved instantly. I did not go to sleep. I went to work. I slipped out of the guest room, my feet silent on the plush carpet. I did not go to the kitchen to clean up the crime scene. I knew he had already poured the grapefruit soda down the sink and washed the glasses while I was getting dressed at the hospital. He was efficient at cleaning up spills, but I was efficient at finding the stain that remains. I went straight to the home office. This was the room where Wes played at being a real estate mogul. It was filled with mahogany furniture and framed awards for sales that I knew were inflated. In the corner stood a large, fireproof safe. Wes told me years ago that he lost the combination and only used the key, which he kept on his personal ring. He thought that kept me out. He forgot that I am a fraud investigator. I notice numbers. I notice patterns. I had watched him punch in the code 3 months ago when he thought I was in the shower. It was his mother's birthday backwards. 1, 0, 2, 4, 6, 5. The lock beeped a happy, electronic chirp. I turned the handle and the heavy door swung open. I pulled out the expanding file folder labeled Insurance. It was thick. I thumbed through the papers. Bypassing the car insurance and the condo policy, I found what I was looking for at the back. It was a life insurance policy with a terrifyingly high payout. $4 million. I scanned the document. My eyes narrowed. The policy date was recent, effectively replacing an older, smaller policy we had taken out when we first bought the condo. But it was the beneficiary section that made my blood turn to ice. Primary beneficiary Wesley Hughes. Contingent beneficiary Kendra Hughes. Kendra, his mother. The woman who critiqued my cooking and asked why I did not wear more makeup was the backup plan. If Wes went to prison, or if he died in the process of killing me, the money would not go to my family or my charity. It would go to her. This was not just a husband killing a wife. This was a family business transaction. I flipped to the signature page. There it was, my signature. It was a digital signature, the kind used by DocuSign or Adobe Sign. It looked exactly like mine. It had the right loop on the A and the sharp strike on the H. But I knew I had never seen this document before. I sat down at Wes's desk and woke up his laptop. It was password protected, but I had installed a keystroke logger on his machine 6 months ago, not because I suspected murder, but because I suspected he was gambling again. I typed in his password, a variation of his high school football jersey number, and the screen flared to life. I bypassed his browser history and went straight to the system logs. I needed to know how he got my signature. I found it in the application data. There was a remote access Trojan installed on my own laptop, the one I used for work. It had been syncing my keystrokes and my digital certificate files to a cloud folder that Wes had access to. He had not just forged my signature, he had stolen my digital identity. He had logged in as me, opened the email from the insurance broker, signed the document, and then deleted the confirmation email from my inbox before I ever woke up. It was sophisticated. It was technical. And it was proof of premeditation that went back weeks. I minimized the logs and opened his banking apps. I needed to follow the money. Murder for insurance is a long game, but people like Wes usually have immediate cash flow problems that force their hand. I pulled up the accounts for a shell company he called WH Holdings LLC. On the surface, it was a property management firm. In reality, it was a drain. The account was bleeding. I saw wire transfers going out to an offshore entity that flagged in my brain as a known front for high-risk lending loan sharks. Wes was paying 15% interest on a $200,000 loan. He was drowning. The $4 million from my death was not a windfall. It was a lifeline. But then I saw the smaller transfers. They were frequent. $300 here, $500 there. A purchase at a luxury boutique for $2,000, a weekend stay at a resort in the Smokies. I traced the recipient. The transfers were going to a Zelle account linked to a phone number. I ran the number through a reverse lookup database I used for work. Sienna Blake. I typed the name into a search engine. Her social media profiles were wide open. Sienna Blake was 24 years old. She worked as a receptionist at Lumina Wellness, a high-end medical spa in Green Hills. Her salary could not have been more than $40,000 a year. Yet, her Instagram feed was a catalog of wealth. There were photos of her with a $10,000 handbag. There were photos of her driving a leased BMW, and in one photo, posted 3 weeks ago, I saw a reflection in her sunglasses. It was a man taking the picture. He was wearing a slate gray shirt. It was Wes. I stared at the screen. Sienna Blake. The voice on the phone. The woman who was supposed to be waiting in the blind spot with the trunk open. She was not just a mistress. She was a partner. She was spending money she did not have. Banking on a payday that required my heart to stop beating. I was building a mental map of the conspiracy. Wes was the architect. Kendra was the safety net. Sienna was the accomplice. But there was one piece missing. Why now? Why tonight? Why not wait until the loan sharks were actually breaking his legs? I switched tabs to check my own work email, intending to forward some of the evidence to my secure server. When my inbox loaded, I saw an email that stopped my breath. It was from Marcus Thorne. Marcus was a senior director at Kestrel Pine. He was my boss's boss. He was the man who signed off on the major investigations. The subject line read, "Confirmed leave of absence." I clicked it, my hand trembling slightly. The email was short. Adeline, per our discussion, I have approved your request for an indefinite medical leave of absence starting tomorrow. I have instructed IT to revoke your system access at 5 p.m. today to ensure you focus on your recovery. We can discuss your return date when you are feeling better. I stared at the words. I had never requested leave. I had never spoken to Marcus about my health. I looked at the timestamp. The email was sent yesterday afternoon, hours before the anniversary dinner. A cold realization washed over me. This was not just about the insurance money. I was working on a massive audit of a construction firm in Memphis. It was a sensitive case involving kickbacks and inflated invoicing. I was close to finding the smoking gun. Marcus Thorne had been pushing me to close the file, saying we had enough, but I had insisted on digging deeper. If I died tonight, or if I disappeared into a rehab facility for a sudden breakdown, the investigation would stall. The file would be reassigned, or buried. Wes knew I was working on a big case. He knew the pressure I was under. Had someone approached him, or had he used my work situation as a cover? It was darker than that. I checked Marcus's email again. Per our discussion. There was no discussion. Someone at my company wanted me gone. And somehow, that desire had aligned perfectly with my husband's need for $4 million. I sat back in the leather chair, the silence of the room deafening. I was not just a wife being murdered for money. I was a loose end being tied up by a corporate cover-up. Wes was not working alone, and his network extended far beyond his mother and his mistress. He had leverage at my job, or maybe my job had leverage on him. I looked at the safe. I looked at the computer screen. They thought they were removing a problem. They thought they were erasing an obstacle. I closed the laptop. I wiped the keyboard with the hem of my shirt to remove my fingerprints. I locked the safe. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city that looked so bright and clean in the morning light. They had made a critical error. They treated me like a victim. They forgot that I am not just a woman who signs papers. I am an investigator. I am the person who finds the one line of code that brings down a kingdom. I knew who the players were now. I knew the stakes. Wes, Kendra, Sienna, and now, Marcus Thorne. I had to take them all down. And I had to do it before 5 p.m., when my access to the company servers and the evidence of Marcus's complicity would be cut off forever. I left the office and went back to the guest room. I lay down on the bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. I needed to rest for 1 hour. Then, I needed to make a phone call to the one person I could trust to help me dismantle a conspiracy from the inside out. The game had just expanded, and I was done playing defense. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, staring at the phone in my hand. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. The apartment was quiet, wrapped in the thick, suffocating silence of a household pretending nothing was wrong. I could hear Wes in the living room, probably pacing, probably waiting for the moment he could leave to meet Sienna without looking suspicious. He was waiting for me to fall asleep. I was waiting for him to make a mistake. I knew he was panicked. The paramedics, the police report, the hospital visit. None of that was in his script. He was improvising, and improvisation breeds errors. I needed to force his hand. I needed him to move the evidence he had left behind in his haste last night. I opened my messaging app and typed a text to him. I made sure my fingers trembled slightly, not because I was scared, but because I needed to get into character. Honey, I am scared. I wrote, the police kept asking so many questions at the hospital. What if they come back to search the apartment? Is there anything here they might misunderstand? I do not want them to find anything that looks bad. I hit send. I heard his phone ping in the living room. Then, silence. I counted to 10. I turned to the laptop I had stolen from his office earlier. I had the Cloud Sync window open, watching his messages in real time. I saw the 3 dots appear as he typed. He was not replying to me. He was replying to Sienna, code red. His message read, she is asking about a search. The bag is still in the kitchen trash. The shaker, the bottle, everything. You need to get it out. Now, use the service elevator key I gave you. Do not let anyone see you. Got him. He was sending his accomplice directly into the kill zone. I watched Sienna's reply pop up. I am 5 minutes away. I will park in the alley. I allowed myself a cold, grim smile. Wes thought he was cleaning up a crime scene. In reality, he was delivering a witness directly to the authorities. I waited 4 minutes. I needed her to be inside the building, committed to the act, but not yet safe in the apartment. I picked up the landline on the bedside table. I did not use my cell phone. I dialed the front desk. When the automated system picked up, I pressed 0. Security, this is Greg. The voice answered. I pitched my voice lower, adding a tremor of nervous observation. Hello? I said. I am calling from the 3rd floor. I am looking out my window into the service alley. There is a woman trying to pry open the service door. She looks like she is trying to bypass the lock. She is wearing a hoodie and carrying a large tote bag. It looks suspicious. I will check it out immediately. Ma'am, Greg said. I hung up. I did not live on the 3rd floor. I lived on the penthouse level, but the service elevator ground floor exit was visible from the third floor hallway window. It was a plausible lie. I walked to the door of the guest room and cracked it open just an inch. I needed to hear this. A few minutes passed. I heard the service elevator chime in the hallway outside our kitchen. Wes rushed to it. I heard the heavy metal doors slide open. Did you get it? Wes hissed. I am trying, a female voice whispered back. It was Sienna. She sounded frantic. Where is it? In the tall bin under the sink. Go. Hurry. I heard the rustle of plastic, the trash bag being yanked out, the clink of glass bottles hitting each other inside the bag. Go, 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 Wes urged. The elevator doors closed. I checked my watch. Greg from security would be intercepting her right about now. I switched the feed on the laptop to the building's security camera network. I had access to the guest login, which showed the lobby and service areas. I saw it happen in grainy black and white. Sienna stepped out of the service elevator in the lobby, clutching a black trash bag to her chest like it was gold bullion. Greg and 2 other guards were waiting for her. They stepped in her path. She tried to step around them. Greg put a hand out. I could not hear the audio, but I saw the body language. Sienna was shouting. She was pointing up at the ceiling, likely screaming that she had permission. Greg was shaking his head. He pointed to the bag. He reached for it. She pulled back. She dropped the bag. The bag split. Even on the grainy screen, I saw the contents spill out. The empty gin bottle, the shaker, the grapefruit soda cans, and the distinctive, shattered remains of the martini glass I had planted in the fern. It looked exactly like what it was someone disposing of evidence. Then, the police walked in. They must have been patrolling nearby. Or Greg had called them the moment I reported a break-in. I saw Sienna crumble. She was not a hardened criminal. She was a receptionist who liked expensive purses. She was 24 and terrified. As the officer grabbed her wrist, her knees gave way. I needed to hear what she was saying. I closed the laptop and walked out into the living room. Wes was standing by the window, looking down at the street. He was rigid with tension. What is going on down there? I asked. Rubbing my eyes. I hear sirens. Wes spun around. His face was a mask of pure terror, though he tried to compose it into annoyance. Nothing, he said quickly. Just city noise. Go back to bed. Addie. His phone rang. He stared at it. It was an unknown number. He did not answer. It rang again. Answer it. Wes, I said softly. It might be the hospital. He picked it up. Hello. I watched the color drain from his face. It was a slow, sickly fade from flush to gray. Yes, officer, he stammered. I know her. She is a friend. She was just helping with some cleaning. He listened for a moment. Trespassing, no. I gave her a key. He looked at me. He realized he was trapped. If he admitted he gave her a key, he admitted to giving a mistress access to our home. If he denied it, she was going to jail for breaking and entering, and she would flip on him to save herself. I will be right down, he said. He hung up. He looked at me, his eyes wild. I have to go downstairs, he said. There is a misunderstanding with the cleaning lady. I nodded. Go handle it. Honey? He ran out the door. I walked to the window and looked down. I saw the police cruiser. I saw Sienna being handcuffed. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Sienna was shouting at Wes as he emerged from the building. She was not protecting him. She was pointing at him. I pressed my face against the glass. Even from 20 floors up, I could read the desperation. My phone rang. I assumed it was Lena, calling to tell me she had heard about the arrest. I picked it up without looking. Hello? Adeline Hughes. The voice was female, crisp, and unfamiliar. Yes, this is she. This is Sarah Jenkins from Human Resources at Kestrel Pine. My stomach dropped. Why was HR calling me in the middle of a police incident? Hi, Sarah, I said, keeping my voice steady. Is something wrong? I received an email about medical leave, but I did not request it. We need to discuss that. Sarah said. Her tone was not friendly. It was the tone of an executioner reading a verdict. We received a formal whistleblower complaint this morning regarding your conduct. My grip on the phone tightened. My conduct. The complaint alleges that you have been using company resources to stage a personal crisis. Sarah continued. Specifically, it claims you have been manufacturing evidence of a domestic dispute to frame your husband in order to leverage a divorce settlement. The source provided audio recordings of you instructing a third party on how to fake a medical emergency. The room spun. Audio recordings. Me instructing someone. That is a lie, I said, my voice rising. That is completely fabricated. Who is the source? We cannot disclose the source, Sarah said, but the evidence is compelling. Adeline, given your position as a fraud investigator, the optics are catastrophic. We are placing you on immediate unpaid suspension pending an internal review. Do not access company servers. Do not contact clients. I knew who it was. It was not a random whistleblower. It was the manager I had investigated 2 years ago, the one who had been skimming off the construction contracts. I had not been able to nail him completely, but I had damaged his career. He had been demoted. He had been waiting. And somehow, he was working with Wes. It was a pincer movement. Wes attacked my life. The manager attacked my credibility. If I died. Wes got the money. If I survived. The manager ensured I was destroyed professionally. They wanted to paint me as the unstable, manipulative wife who staged her own poisoning. They wanted to make me look like the villain so that when I pointed the finger at Wes, no one would believe me. I hung up the phone. I stood in the center of the living room. I was suspended. My husband was downstairs trying to talk his mistress out of handcuffs. My career was in flames. They wanted me to break. They wanted me to scream, to cry, to lash out. They wanted the crazy wife they had written into their script. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at myself. I looked tired. I looked pale. But I did not look crazy. I looked dangerous. I picked up my purse. I checked for my passport. I checked for the flash drive where I had backed up the laptop logs. I had to win on 2 fronts now. I had to stay alive long enough to testify against Wes. And I had to prove that the evidence against me at work was a deep fake fabrication. I was not just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting for my name. I walked to the door. I could not stay here. The apartment was compromised. The police were downstairs. But they were not my friends. They were potential witnesses to my instability. I needed neutral ground. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. I did not take the elevator. I took the stairs to the roof. I had one more call to make, and this one was not to the police. It was to the one person who knew more about fake audio and digital framing than anyone else in Nashville. The game had changed. It was no longer a murder mystery. It was a war of narratives, and I was going to write the ending. I checked myself into the emergency room at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, not because I needed medical attention, but because I needed a fortress. The hospital had security cameras, witnesses, and logs. It was the only place Wes could not touch me. Or so I thought. 2 hours later, the door to my private room flew open with enough force to bang against the wall stopper. It was not a doctor. It was not a nurse. It was Kendra Hughes. My mother-in-law did not look like a woman rushing to the bedside of a sick relative. She looked like a CEO arriving to hostilely take over a failing company. She was wearing a cream-colored Chanel suit that cost more than my first car, and her hair was sprayed into a helmet of blonde steel that defied the laws of physics. She marched to the side of my bed, her heels clicking a sharp, aggressive rhythm on the linoleum floor. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask what the doctor said. She did not even look at the IV line in my arm. She looked straight at my purse on the side table. You always have to make a scene, do you not? Adeline, she hissed. Her voice was low, but it carried the venom of a viper. I lay back against the pillows, keeping my face blank. I was operating on pure adrenaline and rage, but to her, I needed to look like a broken doll. I was poisoned. Kendra, I whispered, poisoned. She scoffed. She waved a manicured hand as if swatting away a fly. You had a cocktail. You had a reaction. You are so dramatic. Wes is beside himself. He is downstairs filling out paperwork because you are too selfish to handle this privately. She leaned in closer. Her perfume smelled of expensive lilies and old money. Where is the binder? She asked. The question hung in the air, vibrating with implication. What binder? I asked, feigning confusion. The insurance binder, she snapped. The updated policy. Wes said he left it on the counter. Did you move it? Did you hide it? We need to secure the paperwork before the police start digging through the apartment and misinterpret things. There it was. A normal mother asks if her daughter-in-law is dying. A co-conspirator asks where the payout contract is located. I stared at her. I let the silence stretch. I let her see that I was looking at her, really looking at her. For a second, her mask slipped. I saw the greed in her eyes. It was hungry and desperate. She was not protecting her son. She was protecting her investment. I do not know where it is. I lied. I think it is still in the safe. She let out a breath of frustration. Useless, she muttered. Get dressed. We are taking you home. I am not leaving you here to blab to any more nurses. They discharged me an hour later. Wes drove the car. Kendra sat in the back. The silence in the vehicle was heavy enough to crush a diamond. When we got back to the penthouse, the atmosphere shifted. The police were gone. The apartment felt like a stage set where a tragedy had just been rehearsed. Wes looked haggard, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. Kendra, however, was energized. She was the general on the battlefield. Go lie down. Adeline, she ordered as we walked through the door. I will make tea. Wes, come to the living room. We need to talk strategy. I nodded obediently. I walked toward the bedroom, dragging my feet, but I did not go to bed. I had prepared for this moment weeks ago, not knowing specifically how it would play out, but knowing that eventually the walls would have ears. I had bought a high-end essential oil diffuser for the living room. It looked like a sleek piece of modern ceramic art. Inside the base, however, was a voice-activated recorder with a battery life of 48 hours. I stopped by the coffee table on my way to the hallway. I just need to turn this on, I murmured, my voice trembling. The lavender helps me sleep. I pressed the button. A soft mist began to rise. The red light of the recorder blinked once, invisible underneath the ceramic shell. I walked to the bedroom, closed the door, and locked it. Then I put on my noise-canceling headphones. Connected to the Bluetooth receiver I had paired with the diffuser, the audio was crystal clear. You are losing it. Wes. Kendra's voice cut through the static. Pull yourself together. She was arrested. Mom Wes's voice was high, verging on panic. Sienna was arrested right in the lobby. She is going to talk. She is going to tell them I gave her the key. She is going to tell them about the bag. Let her talk, Kendra said. Her voice was ice cold. She is a mistress. She is a scorned woman. Who is the jury going to believe? A 24-year-old receptionist with a history of credit card debt, or Adeline Hughes, the paranoid, work-obsessed alcoholic who staged her own attack for attention, Alcoholic Wes asked. Adeline barely drinks. She does now. Kendra said, we control the narrative. Wes, listen to me. Stop using the word drugs. Stop using the word poison. If anyone asks, Adeline took a sleeping pill. She mixed it with alcohol. She got confused. It was an accident, but the toxicology report Wes started will show sedatives, Kendra interrupted, which she has access to. We just need to plant the bottle in her nightstand. I brought one from my house. It is a prescription for Zolpidem. I scraped the label off. My blood ran cold. She had brought props. I listened as she paced the room. I could hear her heels on the hardwood. This is not the first time I've cleaned up a mess like this, she said. Do you remember your Uncle Jerry number, Wes said? I was a kid. Exactly, Kendra said, because I handled it. Jerry wanted to leave everything to that waitress he met in Reno. I went to the hospital when his liver was failing. I waited until the morphine drip was high. I put the pen in his hand. I guided it. He signed the transfer of deed to the family trust thinking he was signing a menu for lunch. I pressed the headphones tighter to my ears. She was confessing to fraud. She was confessing to elder abuse. She was bragging about it. It is all about timing. Wes, she continued, Adeline is weak right now. We need to push her. We need to make her feel like she is going crazy. Gaslight her until she questions her own memory. If she thinks she did this to herself, she will sign the divorce papers just to get away from the shame. What about the media? Wes asked. The police report is public record. If this gets out, it is already handled, Kendra said. I hired Sterling Vance Crisis Management this morning. They are the best in the business. They are already seeding stories on social media. Anonymous tips about Adeline's mental breakdown. By tomorrow morning, the headline will not be attempted murder. It will be tragic spiral of a Nashville executive. Sterling Vance. I knew that firm. They charged $500 an hour just to pick up the phone. Their retainer was minimum $50,000. Did you pay them? Wes asked. I do not have that kind of cash liquid right now. I paid the retainer, Kendra said, but I used the joint account, the one Adeline puts her bonuses in. I sat up on the bed. She used my money. She used the money I had earned catching fraudsters to pay a firm to paint me as a fraud. That is risky, Wes said. She will see the transaction. She will not see anything if we take her phone and laptop. Kendra said, go in there. Wait until she's asleep. Take her devices. Tell her it is for her own good, that she needs a digital detox. We cut her off from the world. Wes. We isolate her. I looked at my phone. I had minutes, maybe seconds. I opened my banking app. There it was. A pending transaction for $50,000 to Sterling Vance LLC. Time-stamped 2 hours ago. I took a screenshot. I uploaded it to the secure cloud. I looked at the door. They were coming for my lifeline. They were coming to blind me. I realized then that Kendra was far more dangerous than Wes. Wes was a greedy coward, but Kendra was a general. She understood that in the modern world, you do not need to kill the body to destroy the person. You just need to kill their credibility. I stood up. I could not let them take my phone, but if I fought them, it would feed their narrative of my hysteria. I had to be smarter. I opened the window of the bedroom. We were on the penthouse level, but there was a decorative ledge that ran along the building, connecting the balconies. It was narrow. It was dangerous, but it led to the neighbor's terrace. The neighbor was an elderly woman named Mrs. Higgins, who spent her days watching soap operas and her nights listening to police scanners. She had always liked me. I heard footsteps approaching the bedroom door. Wes, get the key, Kendra whispered outside. I acted fast. I did not climb out the window. That would look like an escape attempt. Instead, I shoved my phone under the heavy mattress. I grabbed my old, cracked spare phone from the bottom of my nightstand drawer, the one I kept as a backup burner. I placed it on the side table. I lay back down and closed my eyes. The door unlocked. Wes walked in. Kendra stood in the doorway, watching. Adeline. Wes whispered. I did not move. I breathed deeply, evenly. He crept to the side of the table. He picked up the dummy phone. Got it, he whispered. Good, Kendra said. Now lock the door from the outside. She stays in there until the press release goes live. They closed the door. I heard the lock turn. I waited until their footsteps faded. Then I reached under the mattress and pulled out my real phone. Kendra wanted a media war. She wanted to use public opinion as a weapon. She thought she had hired the best PR firm in the city. She forgot one thing. I did not need a PR firm. I had the truth, recorded in high definition on a device sitting 5 feet away from her in the living room. I opened the app for the podcast, The Receipts Room. It was a true crime show that specialized in exposing corruption. The host, a woman named Raven, had millions of followers who lived for exposing liars. I found the Submit a Tip button. I attached the audio file of Kendra's confession. I attached the screenshot of the payment. I attached the photo of the anniversary spark I had taken on the balcony. I typed a subject line, The Anniversary Murder Plot Live from the Inside. I hit send. Kendra wanted to control the story I was about to give her, a plot twist she never saw coming. I lay back on the pillow, clutching the phone to my chest, and waited for the world to wake up. The headline hit my newsfeed at 6 in the morning like a physical slap to the face. It was from a gossip site that usually covered country music affairs. But today, I was the star. The title read, "The Gone Girl of the Gulch: How One Executive Staged Her Own Murder Attempt." Below it was a photograph. It was a grainy, zoomed-in shot of me standing outside the apartment building the night the paramedics came. In the image, I was pointing a finger, my mouth open in a shout. The caption claimed I was screaming orders at the police. In reality, that was the moment I had pointed to the ambulance and begged them not to let Wes ride with me. But context is the first casualty of war. The photo was cropped, filtered, and framed to make me look deranged, controlling, and terrifyingly precise. Kendra's $50,000 was working hard. My phone, which I had retrieved from under the mattress before fleeing to a hotel, began to vibrate with a relentless, buzzing fury. It was not friends checking in, it was hate mail. My inbox, usually reserved for audit reports and compliance updates, was flooding with messages from strangers calling me a psychopath, a liar, and a manipulator. Then came the call that hurt the most. It was legal. Not my lawyer, but Kestrel Pine's general counsel. "Adeline," he said, his voice stiff and formal. "In light of the escalating media situation and the sensitive nature of your role as a fraud investigator, we are converting your suspension to an indefinite administrative leave without pay. We cannot have a lead investigator who is publicly accused of fabricating evidence. It is a liability issue. They were not firing me. They were starving me out. They were removing my badge, my credibility, and my income in one stroke." Wes was trying to kill me for the second time in 48 hours. The first time was aimed at my heart. This time, it was aimed at my name. I did not post a tearful video on Instagram denying the claims. I did not write a long, defensive Facebook status. I knew that in the court of public opinion. Denial looks like guilt. Instead, I did what I have done for 15 years. I built a case file. I turned my hotel room into a war room. I pushed the desk against the wall and started taping up the timeline. I was not Adeline the victim. I was Adeline the lead investigator, and my client was the truth. I laid it all out. Exhibit A. The audio from the balcony, Wes's voice, clear as a bell, saying, "She will not remember a thing." Exhibit B. The video file from the hidden camera I had installed in the kitchen months ago to catch him gambling. It showed him crushing pills into the shaker. It showed the tremor in his hands. It showed premeditation. Exhibit C. The security logs from the building, proving Sienna entered the service elevator exactly when Wes told her to. Exhibit D. The medical report from the ER, showing the presence of benzodiazepines in my blood, a drug I have never been prescribed. Exhibit E. The screenshots of the text messages between Wes and Sienna, the code red message. The instruction to destroy the bag. Exhibit F. The invoice from Sterling Vance Crisis Management, paid for with my money, time-stamped 2 hours before the first hit piece went live. Exhibit G. The crown jewel. The recording of Kendra in the living room, the way she casually referenced murder as a family problem-solving strategy. I looked at the wall. It was a masterpiece of forensic accounting and surveillance. But I knew it was not enough. In a legal battle, this would win. But this was not a legal battle yet. This was a PR war, and they had a megaphone while I was whispering, I needed a nuke. That afternoon, Lena came to my hotel room. She looked tired, her usually pristine suit slightly rumpled. She did not hug me. She walked straight to the desk, dropped a heavy manila envelope on top of my timeline, and poured herself a glass of water from the tap. "We got her," Lena said. I looked at the envelope. "Who's Sienna?" Lena said. "She has been in holding for 24 hours. Her public defender told her to keep her mouth shut, but I sent a message through a back channel. I told her that Wes is currently painting her as the stalker who broke in. I told her that the crisis management narrative is that Sienna is an obsessed fan who tried to kill you to take your place, and Wes is the innocent husband caught in the middle. I raised an eyebrow. Is that true? It is now. Lena smiled grimly. I planted that rumor myself on a few forums this morning. Sienna saw it. She panicked. She realized she is the disposable pawn. She fired her public defender and asked for a deal. I opened the envelope. Inside was a transcript of a police interview and a small USB drive. She gave us everything, Lena said, but she gave us one thing specifically that you need to hear. I plugged the drive into my laptop. It was a voice memo from Sienna's phone, recorded 3 weeks ago. The audio crackled, and then I heard Wes's voice. He sounded drunk, or maybe just arrogant. Stop worrying about the prenup. Sienna, Wes said. The prenup only matters if we divorce. We are not divorcing. Adeline works so hard. Stress is a killer. If she has a breakdown, or if she loses her memory, she will sign anything I put in front of her. I just need her pliable. Once the brain fog sets in, I get power of attorney. And then we cash out. I sat back in the chair. It was the smoking gun. It proved that the loss of memory he mentioned on the balcony was not just about the murder night. It was a long-term strategy. He had been planning to gaslight me into legal incompetence. This changes everything. I said, "It does." Lena agreed. "We are filing this with the district attorney tomorrow. It guarantees an indictment. But Adeline, you need to be prepared. Wes knows he is cornered, and cornered animals bite." 2 hours later, Wes appeared on a local news segment. He was sitting next to Kendra, holding her hand. He looked devastatingly handsome and utterly broken. "I love my wife," Wes told the reporter, a tear sliding down his cheek. "But her job, it creates a paranoia that is hard to describe. Adeline is a fraud investigator. She spends her life inventing scenarios, planting evidence to catch thieves. She knows how to fake digital signatures. She knows how to splice audio. I believe she is having a psychotic break. She has staged this entire murder plot because she wants to leave me but doesn't want to split our assets. She is using her professional skills to frame me." I watched the screen, my blood boiling. He was using my competence as a weapon against me. He was telling the world that because I was good at my job, I was capable of being a criminal mastermind, and the comments section was eating it up. People love a conspiracy. They love the idea of a gone girl villainess more than they love a boring domestic abuser. "She is smart," Wes continued, looking directly into the camera. "She is the smartest person I know, and that is why I am terrified. She could plant anything. She could fake anything. It was a brilliant defense. It cast doubt on every piece of evidence I had." Audio. She spliced it. Texts, she spoofed them. Money, she moved it herself. I looked at Lena. "He is good," Lena admitted. "He is playing the victim card perfectly. If we go to trial with a jury that has seen this interview, they will have reasonable doubt. We are not waiting for a trial," I said. I picked up my laptop. I am not going to let him control the narrative for one more minute. I opened the website for the Receipts Room. It was the most popular true crime podcast in the country. The host, Raven, was a former investigative journalist who had been fired for being too aggressive. She did not do both sides journalism. She did raw data dumps. She put the evidence online and let the internet do the detective work. I had been listening to her for years. I knew her submission guidelines by heart. Exclusive. I typed in the subject line. The Adeline Hughes case. The uncut files. I did not write a long story. I did not write a plea for sympathy. I simply uploaded the folder. Folder 1. The balcony audio raw/unedited. Folder 2. The kitchen camera video time-stamped. Folder 3. The Kendra confession, high fidelity. Folder 4. The Sienna tape. Folder 5. The Sterling Vance invoice. I added a single note. My husband says I am smart enough to fake this. Listen to the background noise on the balcony tape. You can hear the siren of a fire truck passing on the street below at 7:23. Check the Nashville Fire Department dispatch logs for that exact time. You cannot fake a city. I hit send. Then I waited. It took 40 minutes. At 7 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Twitter. The receipts room had just posted, "Emergency drop." The tweet read, "We just received the mother lode on the Hughes case. Forget what you saw on the news. Put your headphones on. This is not a drill." I clicked the link. Raven had not even recorded an intro. She just played the tapes. First, the balcony, Wes's voice, cold and reptilian. She won't remember a thing. Then, Kendra, do not call it poison. Then, the pièce de résistance. Wes bragging to Sienna about making me pliable. I watched the download counter on the file. 1,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. The internet works fast. Within 20 minutes, the hashtag justice for Adeline was trending, but it was not just hashtags, it was the sleuths. A user named AudioJunkie99 posted I ran the balcony tape through a spectral analyzer. There are no splice points. This is one continuous recording. The background noise matches the acoustic signature of wind at that elevation. Another user posted I checked the fire department logs like she said. Engine 4 dispatched to Broadway at 7:23 p.m. It matches the audio perfectly. She is telling the truth. The tide did not just turn. It crashed. The comments on the Sterling Vance Facebook page became so toxic they had to shut them down. People were posting the invoice, asking why a PR firm was taking money from a psychotic wife to defend her innocent husband. Then, the final blow. At 8:30 p.m., a video surfaced on TikTok. It was from a nurse who had been on shift at the ER that night. She was sitting in her car, still in scrubs. "I cannot violate HIPAA," she said, looking nervous but determined. "But I saw the news, and I saw that man, Wes Hughes, in my ER. He was not crying. He was on his phone in the waiting room, looking at sports scores. He only started crying when the cameras showed up. I believe her. I watched the views climb into the millions." My phone rang. It was not hate mail this time. It was Sarah Jenkins from HR at Kestrel Pine. "Adeline," she said, her voice trembling. We have seen the podcast. We are reviewing the situation. We may have acted prematurely." I hung up on her. I walked to the window of the hotel room and looked out at the Nashville skyline. Somewhere out there, in that penthouse, Wes and Kendra were watching their carefully constructed narrative burn to the ground. They had $4 million in debt, a mistress who had flipped, and a wife who had just turned the entire internet into a grand jury. They tried to use my silence against me. They forgot that in an investigation, the silence is where you find the truth. I turned to Lena. "Call the district attorney," I said. "Tell them I am ready to give a statement, and tell them to bring handcuffs. I want them arrested tonight." Lena smiled. It was a shark's smile. "Way ahead of you," she said. "They just issued the warrant. The war for public opinion was over. I had won. Now, it was time for the war in the courtroom. And I had saved the best evidence for the judge." The criminal trial of the state of Tennessee versus Wesley Hughes began on a rainy Tuesday in November. The courtroom smelled of lemon floor wax and stale coffee. I sat in the front row behind the prosecution table. I wore a navy blue suit, the kind of armor I usually reserved for board meetings with hostile auditors. I did not look at the defense table where Wes, Kendra, and Sienna sat. I kept my eyes forward, fixed on the seal of the court hanging above the judge's head. Wes looked smaller than I remembered, without his expensive tailor and his confidence. He looked like a man shrinking inside his own skin. Kendra sat beside him, her spine stiff as a rod, refusing to acknowledge the reality of her situation. Sienna looked terrified, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. The defense attorney for Wes opened with the narrative I expected. He painted me as the villain. He called me controlling. He called me paranoid. He told the jury that I was a woman obsessed with her job, who had snapped under pressure and staged a dramatic event to punish a husband who simply wanted to leave her. It was a good story. It was the story they had paid a PR firm $50,000 to write. But stories crumble under the weight of evidence. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named District Attorney Vance, did not waste time with theatrics. She simply played the tape. When the audio from the balcony filled the courtroom, the air seemed to leave the room. She will not remember a thing. Wes's voice said, it was not the voice of a worried husband. It was the voice of a man discarding a piece of trash. Only the time frame matters. The jury looked at Wes. He stared at his hands. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. It was the sound of 12 people realizing that the handsome man in the suit was a monster. The forensic expert took the stand next. He was a dry, academic man who spoke in precise sentences. He explained that the combination of benzodiazepines and alcohol found in the samples I had preserved would create a state of anterograde amnesia. He explained that the victim would be compliant, confused, and unable to form new memories for up to 12 hours. He did not need to explain how the drugs got there. The video of Wes crushing pills in the kitchen, played on the large screens, did that for him. Then came Sienna. Her testimony was the first domino to fall. She had taken a plea deal, trading her freedom for the truth. She sat in the witness box, her voice trembling, and she dismantled Wes's defense brick by brick. She detailed the wire transfers. She explained how Wes had promised her that I would never know. She described the text message telling her to empty the trash and hide the evidence. He told me to clean it up, Sienna said, wiping tears from her face. He said if I did not get rid of the bag, we would both go to jail. He used me. He told me he loved me, but he just needed someone to drive the getaway car. The jury took notes furiously. Wes's lawyer put his head in his hands, but the real blows were yet to come. I had promised myself I would destroy every layer of their plan, and I am a woman of my word. The first major twist landed when the digital forensics expert took the stand. Wes had claimed I signed the new life insurance policy. He claimed I wanted to update it. The expert pulled up a projection of the digital signature log. The signature was executed at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The expert stated, at that specific time, the device used to sign the document was connected to the Wi-Fi network at the Hughes residence. However, Mrs. Hughes's phone GPS and building security logs place her at her office downtown, working an overnight audit. Furthermore, we found a keystroke logger installed on Mrs. Hughes's laptop. The installation was traced back to Mr. Hughes's personal computer. He captured her password, logged in as her, and signed the document himself. It was fraud. It was identity theft. It was proof that this was not a crime of passion, but a calculation of greed. Then came Kendra. Kendra had spent the entire trial looking down her nose at the proceedings, convinced her social standing would protect her. Then the prosecutor played the recording from the living room. Do not call it poison. Kendra's voice echoed through the room. Just say she took the wrong pills. The gasps in the gallery were audible. The jury stared at the elderly woman in the Chanel suit with open disgust. She was no longer the supportive mother. She was the architect. The recording went on to play her bragging about manipulating a dying uncle to sign over his estate. Kendra's face turned a shade of gray I had never seen before. She gripped her pearl necklace as if it were strangling her. But the final blow, the one that truly ended the war, was the one I had dug up myself. The prosecution called a witness I had identified only days before the trial. It was the human resources manager from the PR firm, Sterling Vance. He testified that the anonymous whistleblower complaint sent to my company, Kestrel Pine, had not come from a concerned employee. It had been purchased. We received a payment of $10,000 from a personal account linked to a Mr. Marcus Thorne. The witness stated, Mr. Thorne is a manager at Kestrel Pine. The instruction was to draft a complaint that would trigger an immediate suspension for Mrs. Hughes. The payment to our firm was reimbursed by Mrs. Kendra Hughes under the line item Crisis Management, Marcus Thorne. The manager I had investigated years ago. The man who wanted me gone. The courtroom erupted. It was the final piece of the puzzle. It proved that this was not just a domestic dispute. It was a multi-layered conspiracy designed to end my life, steal my money, and destroy my professional reputation. Wes and Kendra had teamed up with my workplace enemies to ensure that even if I survived the poison, I would have nothing left. The verdict came back in 4 hours. Wesley Hughes guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Kendra Hughes, guilty of conspiracy and witness tampering. Sienna Blake, guilty of accessory after the fact. Sentenced to probation and the loss of her esthetician license. The judge was not lenient. Wes was sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. Kendra received 15 years, as the bailiff handcuffed Wes. He looked back at me. There was no anger in his eyes anymore. Just the hollow, empty look of a man who realized he had gambled everything on the assumption that his wife was stupid, and he had lost. I did not look away. I watched him walk out the side door. I watched the door close. And I felt absolutely nothing. The civil trial for the divorce was a formality after the criminal conviction. The judge awarded me everything: the penthouse, the cars, the investments. Wes was ordered to pay restitution for every cent he had siphoned from our accounts, a debt that would follow him for the rest of his life in prison. I stood on the steps of the courthouse. The rain had stopped. The Nashville sky was a brilliant, washed clean blue. I reached into my purse and pulled out my wedding ring. It was a beautiful diamond, flawless and cold. For months, it had felt like a shackle. Then, it had felt like evidence. I did not throw it into the sewer. I did not toss it into the river. That is what people do in movies. In real life, you do not throw away assets. I placed the ring into a small, clear evidence envelope. I sealed it. I wrote "Case closed" on the front in black marker. I dropped it into my bag. I would sell it tomorrow and donate the proceeds to a shelter for victims of domestic financial abuse. I took a deep breath. The air tasted of wet pavement and freedom. I was Adeline Hughes. I was a fraud investigator. I had caught the biggest fraud of my life, and I had survived. I walked down the steps, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the concrete. I did not look back at the courthouse. I hailed a cab, got in, and for the first time in a very long time, I did not check the time, I did not check my bank account, and I did not check my back. I just watched the city go by, finally belonging to the present. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please drop a comment below letting me know where you are tuning in from, as I would love to connect with you all. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel Olivia Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button so this story can reach even more people.